Right now, a machine longer than a football field is drilling beneath the Hudson River. In the Arizona desert, factories so large they can be seen from space are producing the chips that power artificial intelligence. Over the Pacific, stealth bomber worth billions is completing test flights, with technology so classified that most of its capabilities remain secret. Off the coast of Virginia, turbines taller than skyscrapers are rising out of the open Atlantic Ocean. After decades of delays, abandoned promises, and projects that consumed billions without delivering a single result, something unusual is happening in America. The United States is placing some of the largest infrastructure bets in its entire history. Together, these projects represent hundreds of billions of dollars in investment. But here is the thing nobody is saying loudly enough. Not all of these bets will pay off. Some of these projects could reshape the next century. Others could become some of the most expensive mistakes ever made in modern history. Today, we are going inside 8 of the biggest megaprojects under construction in America right now, and we are going to tell you exactly what is at stake with every single one of them. In 1990, the United States produced 37% of the world's semiconductors. By 2020, that number had collapsed to just 12%. America's most critical rail tunnels beneath the Hudson River were built in 1910, the same year Titanic was under construction. The main bottleneck on the Northeast Corridor is a tunnel from 1873. The country's most important international airport has been called an embarrassment by aviation experts for 30 years. The projects you are about to see are America's answer to all of that. They fall into 4 categories: fixing what is broken, securing what is threatened, reinventing how Americans move, and building the energy foundation for the next 100 years. Some are already succeeding beyond expectations. Some are facing challenges their planners never fully anticipated. At least one of them is a gamble so consequential that its failure would affect nearly every other industry on this list. Let's start there. In 2020, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company announced it was building one chip factory in the Arizona desert north of Phoenix. The investment was $12 billion. At the time, most people did not fully grasp what that announcement would eventually become. 5 years later, TSMC Arizona is the largest foreign direct investment in a greenfield project in American history, with total committed investment now standing at $165 billion. What started as one factory has become a planned complex of 6 semiconductor fabs, 2 advanced packaging facilities, and a dedicated research center spread across 1,100 acres. Here is why this matters more than almost anything else being built in America today. The vast majority of the world's most advanced chips, the processors that run artificial intelligence, power smartphones, guide military systems, control medical devices, are manufactured in Taiwan, one island. If anything disrupts that supply chain, whether military conflict, natural disaster, or political crisis, the global economy does not slow down, it stops. The pandemic already showed America what a partial chip shortage looks like. Ford and General Motors shut down assembly lines. Medical equipment went unproduced. Defense programs stalled. That was a minor disruption compared to what a full Taiwan crisis would mean. TSMC Arizona is the insurance policy against that catastrophe. The first fab came online in late 2024, producing 4-nanometer chips, among the most advanced in the world. The second fab completed construction in 2025 and is already being equipped for 3-nanometer production ahead of its original schedule because of surging AI demand. A third fab broke ground in April 2025. A fourth is in permitting. TSMC's CEO has stated publicly that when the full complex is complete, approximately 30% of the world's most advanced chips will be manufactured in Arizona. This is backed by $6.6 billion in federal CHIPS Act grants and $5 billion in loan guarantees. Building these fabs in America costs 4 to 5 times more than building them in Taiwan. TSMC sent workers to Taiwan for 12 to 18 months of specialized training before bringing them back to run the Arizona lines because the workforce to operate these facilities simply did not exist in the United States before this project began. That is how far behind America had fallen. If that sounds expensive, wait until you see the transportation project America spent 13 years trying not to build. 2 rail tunnels beneath the Hudson River were built in 1910. Every single Amtrak and New Jersey Transit train between New Jersey and Manhattan passes through them. 200,000 passengers use them every single day. And right now, those tunnels are deteriorating faster than they can be repaired. When Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012, 7 million gallons of corrosive salt water flooded into both tunnels. The salt has been eating the infrastructure from the inside ever since. Engineers have been warning for years that if one tunnel fails, hundreds of thousands of commuters could lose their fastest connection to New York overnight, and the economic damage would reach $100 million per day, not per year, per day. The $16 billion Gateway program is the answer. 2 brand new tunnels will be bored beneath the Hudson, running parallel to the deteriorating originals. Once they open, the old tunnels will finally be closed for the comprehensive repairs they have needed for over a decade. Tunnel boring machines, each weighing over 3,000 tons, each longer than a football field, are currently being assembled on the New Jersey side. They will drill 90 feet below the riverbed, laying reinforced concrete tunnel linings as they advance. Here is what makes this story remarkable beyond the engineering. The project was first proposed in 2011. It was killed, revived, stalled, nearly abandoned entirely. One governor returned $271 million in committed federal funding rather than let it proceed. It took 13 more years to break ground. What finally saved it was the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which allocated $12 billion specifically for this project. New York and New Jersey agreed to split the remaining costs. Construction is now active on 5 of the 10 project segments. Completion is targeted for 2035. When those tunnels open, the most economically important rail corridor in the Western Hemisphere will finally have infrastructure built for this century, not the last one. But as critical as the Gateway tunnels are, they are not the oldest bottleneck on America's rail network. That distinction belongs to a tunnel that predates the automobile, the airplane, and electric lighting. Everything you have seen so far is fixing problems that are decades, in some cases over a century, old. The next projects are attempting something the United States has never successfully done before. For 50 years, America has been promising high-speed rail. California's project has consumed over $13 billion without completing a single operational mile between major cities. The political gridlock, cost overruns, and property acquisition nightmares became so notorious that American high-speed rail became an international symbol of government dysfunction. Brightline West is the private company that decided to stop waiting. A $12 billion privately funded rail line will connect Southern California to Las Vegas at speeds up to 200 miles per hour, cutting brutal 4 to 5 hour I-15 drive down to just over 2 hours. Every year, over 50 million people make that crawl through the Mojave Desert. Brightline does not need to convince everyone to stop driving. It only needs a fraction of the people already making the trip. And on those numbers, this may be the most straightforwardly logical transportation bet in modern American history. The route follows the I-15 median almost entirely, a right-of-way reserved for future rail use decades ago. This single design decision eliminates the property acquisition nightmare that destroyed California's timeline and budget. No farms to condemn, no communities to relocate, no years of litigation. Construction began in 2024. The Las Vegas station site is already rising out of the ground. Civil work is accelerating simultaneously through Nevada and into California. $3 billion in federal grants and private activity bonds covering the balance are fully secured. Target opening is 2028. Timed deliberately to coincide with the Los Angeles Summer Olympics, when the corridor will carry more visitors than at any point in its history. If Brightline West works, it becomes the proof of concept for private high-speed rail in corridors across the entire country. Airports are usually boring infrastructure stories. These are not. Both JFK in New York and LAX in Los Angeles are simultaneously undergoing the most ambitious overhauls in their histories. Both have been called embarrassments for decades. Both are racing the same deadline that cannot be moved by a single day: the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Olympics. At JFK, $19 billion transformation is converting 7 decades of disconnected terminal additions into a unified, world-class international gateway. The new Terminal 1, 2.4 million square feet, with 23 gates and full biometric screening, opens in 2026. Building this while handling 62 million annual passengers required construction phased to the hour, with overnight work scheduled around active flight operations. At LAX, a $14 billion overhaul is building the automated people mover, a fully elevated rail system connecting every terminal, all parking structures, a massive consolidated rental car facility covering 5.5 million square feet, one of the largest parking structures on Earth. Terminal-to-terminal connections that currently take up to an hour will take under 5 minutes. Both airports must be substantially complete before the world arrives in Los Angeles. Both are running. If you stood beneath one of these turbines, the blade passing overhead would be longer than a football field, and the structure itself would tower higher than most downtown skyscrapers. 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 176 of these machines are rising from the open Atlantic Ocean. Each stands 850 feet above the waves. Together, when operating at full capacity, they will generate 2.6 gigawatts of clean electricity, enough to power 660,000 homes. That is nearly every household in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Hampton combined. This is the largest offshore wind farm in the United States, by a margin that makes every other American project look like a proof of concept. Building in the open Atlantic is categorically different from land-based construction. These turbines must survive sustained hurricane-force winds and 30-foot waves. The foundations, steel cylinders 30 feet across, are driven 100 feet into the seabed by pile-driving vessels so powerful they can be heard for miles underwater. Installing 176 of them required a specialized fleet of jackup rigs, heavy-lift ships, cable-laying vessels working simultaneously in open ocean conditions. Dominion Energy committed $9.8 billion. Foundation installation began in 2024. The first turbines rose in 2025. Full operation is targeted for 2026. When complete, project will eliminate 5 million tons of carbon emissions annually, the equivalent of removing over 1 million cars from American roads. While civilian projects reshape America's economy, one military program is quietly redefining the country's ability to project power. The B-21 Raider, $23 billion stealth bomber, at least 100 aircraft designed to fly anywhere on the planet, penetrate any air defense system, strike without being detected. Built by Northrop Grumman, it replaces the aging B-1 and B-2 fleets, with an aircraft whose modular design means it can be upgraded throughout its service life as new weapons and technologies emerge. Program has avoided the catastrophic cost overruns that destroyed the credibility of previous military aircraft. Digital engineering allowed virtual prototypes to be exhaustively tested in simulation before metal was cut. First flight occurred in November 2023. First deliveries to operational squadrons begin in 2026. In an era where potential adversaries have invested specifically in air defenses designed to deny American aircraft access, the B-21 is the direct answer, built for the threat that actually exists today. Of all the projects we have covered today, the one in Arizona may ultimately matter most. If Taiwan disappeared from the global chip supply chain tomorrow, the consequences would reach almost every industry on Earth. AI development would stall, smartphone production would stop, defense systems would go without critical components, financial networks, power grids, medical equipment, all of it runs on chips that, until very recently, came overwhelmingly from one island in the Pacific. TSMC Arizona does not just represent a factory, it represents America's decision to stop accepting that vulnerability. Together, these 8 projects, the tunnels, the chip fabs, the high-speed rail, the offshore wind, the stealth bombers, airports, form something larger than the sum of their parts. They are a statement that the country still has the capacity to build things that matter at the scale that history actually requires. A century from now, historians may look back on these decisions the same way we look back at the Hoover Dam or the interstate highway system today, as the bets that defined what America became. Whether they deliver on that promise is still being decided. In tunnels 90 feet below the Hudson River, factories rising from the Arizona desert, and in turbines standing above the open Atlantic, which of these projects do you think will have the biggest impact? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell. We are tracking every single one of these builds, and the updates are coming fast.